Leslie's an immigrant rocket ship, to be honest. Like, that's what he is. Like, he's like God. Like, I don't even know what to say here right now, because like this episode, we talked about everything. We talked about his journey to the States. We talked about cultural differences. We talked about studying computer science and then having a serious car accident where he had to be airlifted to the hospital, moving to nursing, starting real estate. He told the story of how his business was called XSITE Capital. Like he told the story about that. I think I should just stop here. I'm probably rambling at this point. Like, I really think you should just listen to this episode, because it has a ton of stories, a ton of lessons, a ton of advice, a ton of things that you, if you're looking to start a business, if you're looking to develop yourself personally, I think you should listen to this episode. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Newcomers podcast. I mean, first of all, thank you. Like, I mean, I'm so excited. So I hope it doesn't show off while I'm recording, but I'm really excited to do this because, when you read someone's story and then you're like, yeah, this guy gets it. He gets what it means to start life afresh and say to themselves that, you know what, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and just crush through it. But I'm just going to go back and ask, like, what was going through your head when you decided you're like, yeah, I'm going to leave Cameroon? Like, what was going through your head? Because that's like 20 years ago. If I look at, that's like you left when you're about 18, 19. It's pretty young, like what was going through your head at that point in time?
That's a great question. By the way, thank you so much for having me on your platform. So I left Cameroon when I was 18 years old. That was about 24 years ago, actually. 2000, May 15, 2000 was the day I landed to the US. And I had just completed my high school in Cameroon. We do GCE A levels. I had just completed my A levels a year before that. And at that time, I didn't go to university. I was spending time studying computer science because the plan was had always been to migrate to the US. My mom had migrated to the US about 3 years earlier than that, and she was working extremely hard to make sure that she brought us over to the US, myself and my siblings. So that was the plan. Things were moving in the right direction at that time. So getting out of high school, I already knew that my future was going to be by me hopefully migrating to the US and pursuing studies here. And it was an exciting prospect because back then, as a young man in Cameroon, getting out of high school, there were not many opportunities that were available out there, or at least from the perspective, the limited perspective that I had at that point in time, there were not many other opportunities because, again, all we were taught is like, you got to go to school, graduate from school, get a job. I was seeing other people that were graduating, going to school, graduating from university and working for years to find a job. They could not get a job because, as you know, in most African countries, it's not necessarily about what you know, it's about who you know when it comes to getting jobs and all of that. So I didn't come from a rich family. I didn't come from a well-known family. So I didn't have any godfathers or anybody to move me up front. So I felt like moving to the US was like the right opportunity for me. And ever since we were young, we've always known the US as the dreamland. The US has done a good job of marketing that to the rest of the world. So so it's a land of opportunity. So who doesn't want opportunity? So that's why I have migrated here. Yes.
There's something you said I really like, which is you said limited view of. I feel like when you're in Nigeria, Cameroon, like it does have its limitations, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I also think that just because you're in it at some point, at that point in time, and you're trying to survive, your view of the country is just so limited. And then when you move out of the country sometimes and you look back and you're like, oh, there's actually some opportunities there. It might just take much more work to get it through than it would be down back here in the West. But so I really like that because sometimes I get the sense that people move, and which is why I really appreciate that statement. people move and all they do is just castigate and say, oh yeah, no, yeah, back home is bad, back home is X. I'm like, look, it has its issues. I will be first to say, like, Nigeria tires. I ran away from that. Nigeria tires me out. Like, it has its issues, But I still know that there's still stuff there that the people who are not everyone can leave, and we all have to somehow help and put back in us where we came from.
Yeah.
But just kind of moving on, and I'm going to kind of jump between stuff here. So you landed in the US now, kind of started school, I believe. What was it like, young kid, left Cameroon, starting afresh, new culture, all the nuances. Like, what was it like? Like, was it like, gosh, like, this is opportunity, or like, yeah, I miss home? Like, what was some people have, I want to go back. Some people are like, yeah, they're going to dive right in and experience what they're in at the moment.
So I'm going to talk about the point that I'm glad that you picked up on what I said. That's very powerful that you picked up on it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, then I'll answer this question,
Sure.
right? So your perspective of how you look the world is very, very important, right? That's something that I did not learn this until over the last 6-7 years, and that is probably one of the main reasons why that is responsible for the growth that I've experienced personally and in business. The perspective in which you see the world is very, very important, right? You gave the example of like how when we leave, like when I left Cameroon, I was saying exactly the same thing that you're saying, like, oh, this country is garbage, blah blah blah, and all of that. Everybody got to move out of Cameroon because it's garbage, right? Then as I grew in life and as I grew in my mindset and my perspective, I started to look back. I'm like, wait, in Cameroon, there are like Nigerians that migrate to Cameroon in search of opportunity, and they come to Cameroon and they do really well in the same Cameroon that I lived in, right? Then if you look at the reverse, in Nigeria, where those Nigerians are leaving from because they're not there, there are Cameroonians that migrate to Nigeria in search of opportunity and they do really well. So what is the difference? The difference is just that view. Why are you going there? I'm going there in search of opportunity. If you're looking for opportunity, you will see opportunity, right? If you're waiting for your government that owes you the right to give you everything that you need, including a job, including pension, because you're a citizen of that country, that's what you're going to keep looking for. And that's the perspective that a lot of us see the world. It's the same thing in America, right? When I migrated to the US, I was looking for opportunity. Here in the US, there are local US citizens that look at the country and all they see is negativity, right? So what I've come to learn is like our perspective as people that like we have a sense of entitlement when we are natives of a particular area, right? It's like our right to this land, our right to this. The government owes us this owes us that, right? And that to some extent kind of holds us back from having that hungry perspective. When I came to the US, I was hungry. I was hungry for opportunity. My very first job was at McDonald's. I was getting paid $5.25 an hour. I called my best friend in Cameroon. I said, I'm rich. I'm making serious money. I was making $300 every 2 weeks. I was working my butt off every day. Like I was given 40 hours a week. I was doing 60. I would stay late to 3 a.m., just the manager and I, clean up the restaurant and do all of that. I was earning an income, $5.25 an hour, something that I could not do while I was in Cameroon. And people were complaining about the job. I'm like, washing dishes? You complaining about washing dishes for $5.25? Give me the dishes, I'll wash it. So that's the perspective that I came to the US with, right? And then with that opportunity, you start from there and you start striving, you start growing, you start pushing, and you start looking for other opportunities to continue to grow. So I think the perspective of coming to the US in search of opportunity, right, actually helps because again, and it just depends on how big you think that opportunity is. That's truly how big you'll be able to go because at the end of the day, it's still the same kind of hard work that you put in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's the mindset. And I think the balance is that yes, the government does owe you something, give you security, give you something. The government does owe you some job, or because it's the government, you pay your taxes and all that. But at the same time, it's kind of keeping that balance and saying to yourself that, look, the government has work to do, but I also have to keep my mind open and say, like, what are the things I have to do? Because like you said, like there's this saying that we don't see things as they are. We see things as we
As
are.
we are. That's very
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. That's we see things as we are. So, and it's once you start doing that to yourself, then it allows you to be honest and say to yourself that, like, what am I actually doing right now? Like, because you're complaining, but it's you're seeing as you
Yeah.
are. Yeah, it's what you're seeing is your bias is what's defining how you're seeing the world right
Yes.
now. And if you want, it's a hard thing for us to accept because as I grow older and work on myself more, I'm learning that the ego is the most powerful thing. Like once you master your ego, you will do anything in this world. Because
Oh,
but the first part
absolutely.
is even saying to yourself that, okay, like the way I am right now is where I know when it comes. I know I see it. So I don't win it all the time, but I see it when it comes, and I look back. I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, you've come again, right? Like, so this is what you're asking me to do, and it's just trying to battle that thing. But like that see things as we are, it's powerful. So back
Yeah.
to the question about like settling in, fresh night, first week, new kid on the block. Like, how did you handle it?
Oh man, I was scared. I was scared of everything. I'm not naturally an extrovert or somebody that just goes out and start talking to people. So the first few weeks, I spent my time in the house, just waiting for my mom to provide guidance. My siblings were out, going out, meeting kids in the neighborhood. I'm like, man, if I go out and step on somebody's grass, like, what would I get arrested? Like this society looks so clean, like,
Oh gosh,
like
yeah.
what's going on? Luckily enough, I had one of my friends from back home. He's a cousin as well who had been here a few months earlier than me. So he came, took me out, showed me around, and was introducing me to other people. And was like, hey, this is what's going on. This is this, and he's a little bit more outgoing than I was. So at least I had somebody to kind of
Yeah.
show me around, and I had my mother as well. I think I was very lucky that I migrated here to the U.S. as a legal immigrant. My mother was here. She works extremely hard, making sure that we had everything that we needed. Took me out, got me to interview for jobs. That's how I was able to get my first job at McDonald's. And when I started working out there, meeting other people, just getting acclimated to the society, things became less scary
Yeah.
than they did when I initially came here.
Interesting. Now exploring those emotions you're feeling at that point in time, like two questions. What was the first time it hit you that you weren't home? Like you weren't back home in Cameroon? And then the follow-up question on that is, within that first, let me say 1 year maybe, what was your most overwhelming moment where you're like, okay, this is a lot. I should probably either run back home and go sit down my bed and ask myself what I'm doing here, or I should get on the plane and go back to Cameroon, depending on how extreme the emotion was.
The first time I realized I was in Cameroon was when I stepped out of the airport, man. I landed at Dulles Airport and I looked around and I'm seeing all these buildings and the roads. There's so many cars in the roads. I'm like, oh my God, what world is this? Like this is so beautiful. And we're driving from the airport. I'm looking around like I'm in awe. I'm like, this is so nice, like how is this, how are people able to get this stuff done? Like, where are
Yeah.
all these cars going to? And then this is funny. But then when I got home, my mom had made food, and there was like an abundance of meat. I'm like, like I've never seen this much beef and food in my life, you know, yeah. But yeah, that was good. Then on the other part of the question, when the winter came, man, I had to take the bus to school. Every day I would take the bus. I would jump on like 2, 3 buses to get to school every day. And this one day I went to school. I did not look at the weather forecast. I wasn't well dressed, and it started snowing like heavily, heavily. And one of the buses was not, the route was shut down, so I had to walk like 2, 3 miles in the cold to go get to another bus stop to take the bus home. Man, I was like, oh my God, what kind of nonsense is there? Like what? Like yeah, it was rough, you know. But I just kept walking, and then got to the bus stop. Was able to get in the next bus. At least I didn't die of hypothermia. So, so I made it home. But I was like, man, I miss home. I miss home. It's really nice. And then the other thing is like, the other thing that I noticed within my first year is like, a lot of the people were not as friendly as back home. Like back home, you could walk into anybody's house, you could go to the neighbor, you could it's kind of like a small village, it's a community, so that community aspect existed more back home. But here it's like people where everybody owns their own personal space, so that cultural difference was a little bit difficult to adjust to. But over time, it becomes like normal. You understand everybody's cultural perspective, and you just respect it, yeah, and you move on from there. Yeah,
That part about the communal thing, it hits everyone hard because
yeah,
a friend said to me one day, "Does we now use calendars to plan visits?" Like back home,
yeah,
like that wasn't like we now use
exactly.
calendars to plan visits. Like so, like my wife sometimes like I'll just see a thing on my calendar. Going to X on Sunday, I'll just put my hand on my head like this now. I'll be like, gosh. Like
Yeah.
back home, you just go into the
You
car and
just show up.
just show up.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, hey, everyone's like, oh, welcome, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But now you actually, because you could get there and they're out or they have something going on and they don't really have your time. And while they
yeah,
might welcome you into their home, you would sense that you actually just stumbled on something that you shouldn't be in, and
yeah.
it's just a very uncomfortable situation that you're in. You know, now let's move forward to all the interesting things you've done. Went to school, changed nursing, went back to Cameroon, started a trucking company. Let me pause there. Like, I just want to understand the guy who went from studying computer science to saying, serious car accident, nursing. That makes sense to me. We do when we have these near death experiences. A lot of things change in our lives. But like from nursing to starting a trucking company, just walk me through the Leslie who was thinking of all these things.
Yeah, so when I came to the US, I had big dreams, right? I don't know. I think maybe I think I got it. When I reflect on it, I think I got it from my mother because my mother is a big dreamer and a hard worker. So I had big dreams. I wanted to get into computer science and do some big things. That was when like the dot-com thing was happening, Y2K, all of the noise about computers taking over the world and all of that. So that really piqued my interest. That's why I started studying computer science back home before coming over here. So and I was hearing about all these guys doing all this amazing thing on computers and stuff. So I wanted to learn that. But when I came, my mom is a nurse, right? She really wanted one of her kids to go to medical school, do
Oh,
something in healthcare. And none of us were interested. None of us is like, we're not doing none of that. So I started doing computer science and things were going really well. I took a programming class, A++ programming, got a certificate, and I got a job in DC. And remember, I started 5.25 an hour, and this job was promising to pay me $18 an hour. You can imagine, I thought I was rich. And but that happened right around when that dot-com crash happened. So all those jobs went away.
yeah.
Every other person in the Cameroonian society that I was looking up to as a uh, mentor in computer science, they lost their jobs, right? A lot of them were switching back and going to nursing. A lot of them were trying to figure something else out. So I got in this state of like, I was really depressed at that stage. I'm like, man, I'm gonna keep going to school, get out, and I'm unable to have a job. This job that I had, I was looking forward to making this $18 an hour. Maybe even moving out of my mom's house and getting my own apartment is gone. Like, what if I had gotten the apartment and I didn't have that? So that led me down a dark part because I stopped going to class. I wasn't paying attention. I was spending most of my time partying, just hanging out with friends and spending most of my time just partying. And after one of those parties, I was driving back home after I dropped my friends off, and I fell asleep on the wheel. During that time when I was going through this, my mom kept insisting, like, go to medical school, or at least that's a guaranteed job, or do nursing or something. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Just being the normal stubborn son that I was. Yeah, so I fell asleep on the wheel driving back from a party, and I went off my lane, and I had a head-on collision with the other car.
Gosh.
Yeah, and I remember getting out of the car and walking to that other car. And I saw the driver and the passenger, and they were hurt. They were like bleeding, and I'm like, oh my God, did I just kill somebody? Like, and I was hurt myself, but I did not know. I was running to check on the other people. So then somebody came out of the car like, oh my God, oh, go and lay down there. You are hurt. So, and I lay down and I passed out. Next thing I know, I woke up at the hospital, shock trauma hospital, University of Maryland. Actually, I woke up first and I was cold. I woke up, I was cold. Then I realized I was being airlifted to the hospital. I was in a chopper, and took me down to University of Maryland Trauma Hospital. I was there, and as life will have it, my mom was working at that hospital that night as a night shift nurse.
Gosh.
So they came when I regained consciousness. They asked me stuff. I told them my mother is in this hospital. They went and got my mother, and I was out. And I woke up and I saw my mother sitting next to me on the bed crying. And I
Oh
went out
God.
again.
Oh God.
I passed out again. But I finally woke up. But on that hospital bed, I made the decision then and there that I'm going to go into nursing. Right. On that at that moment, I made the decision that I was going to go into nursing. And I was there for a couple of days. The next day I was going out, I saw the other people that I was in an accident with. Thankfully, none of them sustained any life threatening injuries.
Injuries.
They just had some bruises. Which I'm profoundly I don't know how I would have been able to carry
Yeah,
on if I knew that I was
man.
able to cause that kind of hurt to somebody. But that was a pivotal moment in my life, right? When that happened, 2 weeks later, when I was able to put some funds together, I got another car. That happened in November. I think it was November 18, 2001. January 3rd, 2002, I was on my way to North Carolina. I packed my bags, put my clothes in the car, and drove off. I'm like, one of the important lessons that I learned in life is like, your network is who you become. At that time, a lot of my other friends from Cameroun had migrated to the US, and all of them were in Maryland. And we were all partying together, just having fun. So I was like, I gotta get out of here. So I packed my bags, called my cousin in North Carolina. He's a very studious guy, engineer. I'm like, okay, I'm coming. So I got in the car and I moved to North Carolina to go study nursing. So I got there, nice environment, quiet environment, good group of people. Everybody's serious about education. And I was excelling. I did really well in nursing school. But then I always still had, even when going to school, I always had that big vision. Tried a couple of businesses while in nursing school. We were organizing parties every now and then on summers to make some money as well. So that was fun. It's like I think at every point I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, but I
Yeah.
wanted something that some security. So when I started working as a nurse, when I graduated, I moved back to Maryland. I started working as a nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital, right? And so I was making a small good amount of money, then started doing travel nursing. And I was like, man, what can I do? Like maybe now is the time to start thinking about business again. Actually the first thing we do is with a group of friends. My first trip to Cameroun, I was like, I'm gonna go back to visit Cameroun, but let me try to make some money while I go over there. So we loaded a container with a bunch of goods, shipped it to Cameroon to go sell
You
it.
are an evil businessman.
So we loaded the container, went to Cameroon, and that's when everything that could go wrong with that whole stuff. If you're Cameroonian, if you've ever sent a container in Cameroon, you know what I mean. So there are a lot of bottlenecks over there. That container got stuck at the port. I was supposed to be in Cameroon for 3 weeks. I was not able to get it out. We're not able to get it out until about 4 days before I was leaving.
Gosh.
Right. But during that process, right, during that process, because we were going back and forth, the economic capital of Cameroon, Douala, we're going back and forth to the port and all of this stuff. And I was seeing all these trucks. And I'm like, man, this is crazy, right? I'm looking at all these trucks and they're carrying all this stuff. I'm like, these guys are making a killing. So I started doing some research about trucking. Like, this is what we should be doing, right? This is the real business here because this is where the money is. So at that time, struggle, but I got to learn a lot about that business. Then, fortunately, I have one of my cousins that lives in Douala, the economic capital. She owns a laundromat business. So when she would go to the market early in the morning, like 6, 5 a.m. to buy her supplies, I'll go with her. So I'll go in one morning, and you see, that's when I really saw how money was being made. Because in Africa, you don't get to see that if you come from a middle class home. All you go
Yeah,
is
you
go to
don't.
school,
Yeah,
and
you
yeah.
don't. You
So, but when
don't.
you like take some time, go to those markets like 4 5 a.m., and then you see how things really work, I was like, wow, this is powerful stuff. Then that trucking stuff got reinforced in me, because I'm seeing all these truckers bring all these goods, all these traders unloading the goods in the morning. I'm like, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. So when we came back after that trauma experience, got ourselves together. The same group of friends that we did the container with said we gotta get into this trucking thing, you know. So we identified like a supplier of cocoa in Douala, and he had a contract for a specific kind of truck to be delivering the cocoa that has specific specifications. So we're like, okay, we'll supply this for you out of contract, and this is how much you're going to be paying us. He agreed. So we look. Luckily, that was right after the 2008 crash, economic crash, like around 2010, 2011, when things were cheap. So we bought a
Yeah.
nice, good truck from Germany, shipped it to Cameroon with those specifications for that specific contract. But when he got to Cameroon, the guy was like, he lost that contract. So that truck is no longer is no longer relevant. Well, yeah,
Gosh.
so we had to repurpose it, right? We had to repurpose it for it to be doing like general transport and just doing
Yeah.
all that stuff. We were able to do it after about 8 months of pain, going back and forth, spending all this money, trying to repurpose it and all of that. We're able to finally get it and get it on the road. Then it started transporting cocoa and goods from the English speaking region to like Douala to the market. And things were going well. We're making money, making good money. Things were going well. We finally broke even, and we're looking forward to start making more and maybe buy more trucks. Then the conflict broke out.
Oh yeah.
The Anglophone crisis broke out. The areas where we were getting goods from, that's
Well,
where all everything was going bad. The truck almost got burned down, so we were shut down because now you had all these trucks that were going all to the Anglophone region. They're all packed. They're competing for the little. So business was done, right? Ended up selling the truck, and I'm like, I got to go back to school and get another job. So I went to anesthesia school.
oh man, that's a story. Gosh. I'm just gonna let that story sit. I might come back, I might not come back to it, but that is some story. So, like, how did you now from there? How did you move to saying, you know what, I'm going to do real estate? With Julius, like, how did you get there?
So when I got done from anesthesia school, the truck was out. It was down, so it's not working. I got done from anesthesia school. I'm working in the OR. I'm making good money. Great 6 figures plus income. I'm comfortable, right? And my second daughter is born right after my first year of practice, right around my first year of practice, and I'm working hard. I'm like hitting the hours. There's all these overtime hours. I'm picking it up like crazy, working like 50, 60 hours a week. And I'm not home. I'm missing out on my daughter's life, right? I'm not seeing anything. So I came home one day, and she had started walking and babbling,
Gosh.
and I'm looking at her. She's so like happy. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna be doing this and missing out on all my kids' life. And I'm looking at the hospital. I'm seeing these other guys that have been at the job for like 50, 60 years. They're doing well. They have nice houses, nice cars, good retirement packages, but there was just something about their face. I'm like, nah, I really don't want to be here. This is not a bad path, but this is not how I see myself to grow for there. And the other thing too is like at that point, it felt like I had reached the ceiling of my growth, right? Because in nursing, you could start nursing is a great foundation for anybody because you could branch out and go to multiple things, right? So I had branched out and went into anesthesia, which is considered one of the top careers in nursing. What's next, right? I'm gonna go get a doctorate, remain a nurse and a so what's next? So that feeling of hitting the ceiling made me feel really uneasy. So I started looking around like, what am I going to do? What, well, like, is this how the rest of my life is going to be? This doesn't make any sense. So one day I'm sitting during my lunch break and I'm scrolling through my phone and I see an article. It says, oh, I've been hearing people talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad and all this stuff. And it says, oh, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad has written another book for millennials that are stuck in student loan debt that explains the financial system. I'm like, well, that's me. I might as well read this. So I bought the book. The book came, Second Chance at Your Money at Your Life by Robert Kiyosaki. I opened that book, I could not keep it down. It was like a long lost uncle that is just coming back and telling me wisdom, what I need to hear. Back in 2008, I had attempted to get into real estate, right? But that was when the real estate crash happened. I had family
Yeah.
members that were losing houses and all of that stuff. That was actually pushed me to go do business in Cameroun because I'm like, there's nothing here, right? So it explained that to me, why that happened, why people lost houses, how the capitalistic system in the US is set up, how you could set yourself up to win. And what some of the things he talked about was like real estate is a good way to invest because it's tax advantage. You could
Mm-hmm.
invest, make cash flow, grow appreciation, and save on taxes.
Yeah.
And the other thing he talked about was the power of personal development, of investing in yourself.
Yeah.
He mentioned some authors in the book like Earl Nightingale. He talked about Buckminster Fuller, talked about a couple other people. And I just went and I bought the books and I bought this. And one of the tapes I bought was Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. And I think that particular tape did something to my mind because every day I was going to work, and remind you, I was working 60 hours a week, so I was going to work a lot. So I would listen to it on my way to work, listen to it on my way back, listen to it on my way to work, listen to it on my way back, and finally took the courage. And one of the things he talked about was getting into real estate, go to networking events, go. He talked about informal education a lot, right? The real education starts when you get out of school. And real teachers are not the ones that have the degrees and all of that. They're the ones that are doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to learn from. So I did. As I jumped in, joined the Baltimore Real Estate Association, started going to the meetings, signed up for some of their courses, and learn about the BRRR model. And I'm like, man, this is interesting. So I could buy and then make all this money. And I took the courage and I did it. On the first property, I bought it together with my brother. We did the BRRR model, right? So we bought the property, did the renovation. I remember I took 2 weeks off of work to manage the renovation. And during that process, I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed that whole process of going and getting the workers to come and do this, supervising and doing all of that. It was so much fun, right? It didn't feel like I was working. So did that. We got a tenant in there, and a few months later, we went to look at what this property is valued at. The value of that home had gone up by $77,000. So I'm like, wait. So what this guy was saying in that book is real, right? Just like that, I could make $77,000. So what if I do 3, 4, 5 properties a year and keep doing that? So that then I'm like, this is just from reading a book. So I became obsessed with reading and personal development. So I would read this book. It would tell me about this other book. I would jump in and get the book. Like when I got done with anesthesia school, I promised myself I'll never read a book again in my life. But if you look here in my basement while I'm doing this, like the whole basement is filled with books. And I've read way more books than I ever read to my education. And nobody's forcing me to read them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm becoming a better person. Then, as I was getting into real estate, one day my wife came home and said, "Hey, I met this Nigerian guy. He's a young guy, and he was talking to me about life insurance and all this other stuff." And I was like, "I don't know anything about this. I gotta get you to meet my husband." I'm like, why are you trying to introduce me to another insurance salesman? Like I'm tired of meeting this. She's like, no, you gotta meet this guy. I think you go. I think he's a good guy, and we need to do something about life insurance. So she's my wife. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll meet this guy. So the guy shows up. Is Tenny, my partner. So Tenny shows up all nicely dressed and all of that, and he comes in and he's doing his spiel on like insurance. I'm like, this guy, you were trying to sell, you know? Uh, I had read all this stuff about insurance, but I was educated, so I was bombarding him with questions, and he was answering very honestly, right? Like very knowledgeable and answering. I'm like, okay, this guy is different. So we're talking, I'm bombarding him, he's answering. Then during that conversation, somehow he said something. I think that it was from one of the books that I read. I'm like, wait, you read books as well? He's like, yeah. He's very rich, that poor, that cash flow quadrant, and then he's reading a book by on Elon Musk by Ashley Vance, the one of the first books on Elon Musk. I'm like, no way, I'm reading that book as well right now. So we connected on that, right? I'm like, to meet another African brother that is in personal development like I am is rare. At that point, I had no friends. Because when I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, I bought a bunch of copies and I sent it to a bunch of my friends, and none of them read it. So at some point, I realized that this is my
Yeah.
journey that I got to take by myself. So I
Yeah.
cannot be forcing to drag other people. So I recluded myself and I was focusing on that. So I'm like, oh my God, another young guy that's into this stuff. So, this is good. I'll buy your insurance, whatever you're selling, I'll buy it. So got the insurance. Then we became friends. We became accountability partners. He introduced me to some of the stuff he was doing on personal development. I introduced him to some of the books I was reading. Then we started meeting every Friday night. We'll play the cash flow board game. We'll meet at a coffee shop. Like, I'll leave the house and tell my wife I'm going to meet Tenny at a coffee shop, play cash flow board game. You tell his wife the same thing. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? It's like, something,
Are you
something.
guys cuckoo?
Yeah. So we'll go sit down, we'll play cash flow board game. And through the game is interesting because I was able to learn about his money habits through that. And he was able to learn about mine. Right. So we just, for like 6 months, just meeting and just talking, like sharing books, sharing notes and stuff. And then at some point he was like, well, like, guy, you doing this real estate stuff. I've always wanted to do in real estate. I have this insurance thing. Now the cash flow quadrant, we're gonna be in the B and I, business and investment side. Why don't we scale up and then why don't we join forces and scale up the real estate stuff? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so we went to I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it. So I wasn't 100% sold yet on Tenny, right? Because I had tried other partnerships and it didn't work well in the past. But one day we went to a real estate conference. I'm an introvert. So he was like, our goal was to go over there and just talk to other investors and get their contacts because we were looking for like OPM, other people's money, passive investing.
Yeah.
So we got to that conference. There were like 120 people in there. He was like, okay, so what's the plan? I'm like, we just need to get as many contacts here as possible. He's like, oh, okay, just their name, phone number, and email. I'm like, yeah, that's what we need. He's like, okay, all right. He's like, don't worry, sit down, I got this. So I'm there, I'm scared. I'm scared to death. How am I gonna go start talking to people? He's like, don't worry, sit down, I got this. No joke. During the break, he woke up, he went to every single table. He got everybody's contact on the list and he came and he gave it to me. Like, all right, let's do it, man. What's next? I'm like, this is my guy. I'm like, this is my guy, So we partnered up and started doing research in real estate. We wanted to buy single families, a bunch of them, and do like the same BRRRR model. One day he calls me, he's like, you gotta listen to this tape. You gotta listen to this. So I'm listening to it. It was a tape on multifamily investing by Grant Cardone, and he was talking. He was like oversimplification of how multifamily real estate works. But that got me really intrigued, right? I'm like, this is it. This is what we need to do, right? This is like the big business, big investing thing that we need to do. Why focus our attention? Why try to build and get to there instead of just starting there? So we decided to create XSITE Capital Investments to focus on multifamily assets. And when we were talking about it, the more we learned about it, we realized that in our community, in our African immigrant community, we have some of the hardest working people, some of the most disciplined people, some of the highest income earners. But most of us do not even know that we could own these apartment buildings. We all live in apartment buildings. We get the notices every year about a $25 increase. We get the notices here about new pet fee and all of that. But we do not know the amount of wealth that is being created by those little increases. So once we grasp that, we're like, oh my God, we gotta figure out a way to bring this to our community. That's how the name XSITE Capital came about, because we were so excited about it. Yeah, honestly, like it makes sense,
Well,
right?
it doesn't make
Yeah,
no sense.
yeah. So we're like, no, this makes sense. So we're like, can you imagine the number of Nigerian doctors that exist in the US? Can you imagine the number of Cameroonian doctors or medical professionals or engineers that make a lot of money and qualify as accredited investors and don't even know that they could own a piece of these apartment buildings and generate that amount of wealth? So, and as we were talking, I'm like, oh my God, I know this guy. I know this guy at the hospital. That's the first person I'm going to go talk to about this asset. I know this guy. So we started XSITE Capital, but initially we were afraid. Although we created XSITE Capital to go after a demographic, we were afraid to go talk to them. Because like, they're gonna look at you like, this guy, you're a scammer. You're trying to,
I know
why
that
you,
feeling, man. I know that
yeah.
feeling.
So we were scared to go. So the initial place we went to try to talk to investors to build our base is like to actual real estate investors, because the thought process in the back of our mind was, let's go to people that are already used to real estate first,
Yep,
then before we come to our community.
fair
Very
point.
bad idea. It was just a fear, right? We tried to do that. We had an opportunity to be part of a deal. We were not able to raise even a single dollar, not $1 for that deal. So after that incident, it was still Tenny and I. So we sat down and we were debriefing. We're like, okay, so what did we do wrong here and how can we fix it? We identified that branding is important. We did not brand ourselves very well. And then we identified that, oh, we have not really been talking to the people that we created this company for, right? So, and I was like, man, yeah, you remember I had told you about this one guy that I work with, like Dr. Julius Oni. This guy, I know this will be so good for him. Every time we're working, we're talking about investments and all this stuff. But he's never talked about multifamily. He does all this stuff. Like, I gotta figure out a way to go talk to him. Now, Tenny cannot come to my hospital and talk. He can talk to anybody, but me, I'm at that point, I'm afraid to talk to people. So we actually practiced how I was gonna go pitch Dr. Oni, right? Prior to that, I had sent him, I had invited him to one of our meetups because I wanted Tenny to pitch him. So I sent him like some material on multifamily investing. Now he tells us that when he looked at it, it's like, what Ponzi scheme are these guys cooking over here? So he dropped it out. So, but after this incident, right, I was practicing to go talk to him. I never really had the opportunity to pitch him because about 6 weeks later, right, as life happens, it's just amazing how life happens. He calls me. I remember that day vividly. I'm driving somewhere in Baltimore. He calls me. He's like, "Hey Leslie, can you talk for a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, are you still doing that real estate stuff that you said you were doing?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay. I've had a chance to look at the stuff you sent to me. Is your partner available?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can we get on a call?" I'm like, "Absolutely. Just hold on." I put him on hold. I dial Tenny. I'm like, "Dude, you remember that doctor I was telling you about?" It's like, which doctor, dude? Dude, calm down. I'm like, "That doctor, that surgeon I was telling you about."
XSITE Capital.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, yeah. The orthopedic guy." I'm like, "Yeah." I see he's on the phone. He wants to talk to us. Like, oh, man, put it in. Dialed in the call. We're talking to Dr. Oni. He's like, "Man, I've had a chance to review this stuff. I just don't want to be a passive investor. I want to be a partner, right? Whatever you guys have invested so far, I'm willing to come in. This is powerful stuff. We got to bring this to the community." And that conversation ended up lasting about 4 hours. Like, we were just going on the phone, got past the partnership, just talking about each other, our dreams, our goals, our aspirations. And man, like it was like
Gosh, like
a
that's
serendipitous
amazing,
moment,
man. That's
right? I
amazing.
came back home. I was on the phone. My wife is looking at me like what's going on? We were on the phone for like 2, 3 hours. Kept going. When I got home, it kept going. And that was the day that the XSITE Capital, as you see it today, actually came to light. And that was the day that things completely changed from us. The day that Dr. Oni joined the company and became the third leg in the tripod, everything just took off from there.
Wow, like that's like gosh, like that's it's amazing. Like it's just really amazing. I love it when these kinds of things happen. You know. So I am like I. It is like it's such a beautiful story because you're like because I see what you all talk about on LinkedIn and stuff, and I mean I've gone to the website. I'm like, gosh, yeah, like we need more people like this doing these kind of things, coming together to do this kind of stuff, showing people how to do these things, you know, and just banding together because that's the way we grow. Like, you know, they say, what's that thing? A rising tide lifts all boats. Like, that's the way we
Absolutely.
grow. You know,
Yeah.
that's the way we grow. I want to jump into just asking a couple of questions, which is like from the community, which like the three questions about business, which is like the first one is like, how did you gain the confidence to say to yourselves, I was going to venture into entrepreneurship, you know, because as an immigrant, there are various challenges, there are barriers that we face. There are various challenges and barriers that we face, you know. So like, how did you gain the confidence to venture into entrepreneurship despite all the challenges and barriers that immigrants face when they're looking to start a business?
So, gain the confidence to venture into entrepreneurship. I wanted the desire was there really bad, but the confidence just comes with time and action. And I could tell you today that you cannot wait to gain the confidence. The confidence comes with action, right? I'm still afraid to in a lot of situations that we go into. Like right now, we have a $49 million deal on the contract. When we had to do that contract, yeah. So, but I've learned to understand that fear is a necessary part of growth, right? When you're comfortable, you're not growing. I think personal development, me personally, helped me out a lot, right? Getting involved in personal development, understanding how our mind works, and understanding how some of these things come about, and seeing other people, learning from other people, being in other communities of other people that are doing it, and meeting some of these people that are doing amazing things, and realizing that they don't have two heads,
Yeah.
right? Or they're not like and these people too, when you get in the space, you realize that a lot of people are very gracious with knowledge. Right? A lot
Yes.
of people, it's very
Yes.
difficult to see other people that are stepping down that path. So they want to help you grow, they want to push you. So I've had a lot of great mentors along the way. I've met some incredible people, and I cannot tell you enough about my partners, right? And how amazing these brothers have been to my life personally and to our business. I told you the story about Tenny.
Yeah.
I learned so much from him, right? He's a very confident guy. He's not afraid to talk to anybody. I'm the opposite, right? Dr. Oni is just a leader. He's a charger. He's not afraid of anything.
Yeah,
So,
I see the hue.
you know, yeah. So, like, yeah. So those guys, sometimes I just hide behind their confidence, you know, and I'm able to gain a lot from that. So, yeah. So, yeah. So it's just about surrounding yourself with the right people, and then just keep taking action. Confidence comes with action. You cannot wait to have confidence before you move. It's never going to come.
Yeah. And then, you know, you started a ton of businesses, you know, XSITE, the trucking thing. You started a clinic with your wife and Dr. Joshi. Like, so one other question I got was, like, what's the one advice you would give an immigrant entrepreneur who's just starting out on their journey? You know, aside from confidence, breathing action, like, is there another thing that you would give someone?
I'll say take one thing and focus on it, right? And take one thing and focus on it for at least 3 to 5 years. One of the most important mindsets that you could adopt in business, entrepreneurship, or anything is having a long-term perspective. Very important, right? A lot of us wants to start something and you want it to work in 6 months. In 8 months, 9 months, 12 months, you're not seeing results, you shut it down and you walk away. That's not how business works. It takes time. Continuous effort is what leads to results, right? So if you are not willing to dedicate at least, at the very minimum, 3 years of your life towards something, don't start it. But once you pick something, you understand that there's a market for it. Make up your mind that for the next 3 years, I'm going to invest all the time I can, all the money I can, all the visions and desires I can to building this dream. And I guarantee you, you will not fail. There are going to be a ton of like obstacles. It's just part of the journey. Challenges, starting off, not getting, is part of the journey. The question is, are you looking at it from a perspective of fear? I was like, oh, this is not working. Or what can I learn from this? Which other direction can I take? Which other path can I take? If you adopt that attitude, you can never fail. So, but you must have a long-term perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that advice is for me too, because I'm one of those guys who my friends call me an idea stacker. So, like, if you tell me something, I have this, it's a blessing and a curse in the sense that you say something to me, I can build an idea off it. Like, you tell me, this is X. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's an opportunity here. And at some point in my life, I felt like I was just trying different things. I had 3-4 things running. I mean, now I'm doing that thing now where you say, like, I just said to myself, you know what? I want to build a media publication that explores what it means to be an immigrant in every way possible. And I'm just going to focus on doing that. And that's what I'm doing. I just say, I'm just focused on that because I've heard this. You're the third person that say this thing now. Like, find one thing and do it. Do it well till it grows. Most times we want to do 5 things and then you're trying to play a bet, which is going to grow. Like, none of them will grow. Like, none will grow. And then you talked a bit about failure. So, like, one of the questions I got was also, like, the first time you majorly failed, business, personal life, like, how did you overcome it?
Earlier on in life, I did not really handle failure very well. Used to beat myself up whenever I failed at something, look down on myself. But in business, I failed so many times. And I don't know. It's like in business, it's like I get so excited about the possibility of business that when I feel it has been much easier for me to pick up the pieces and go. Not every business that I've started, as you know, by the story that I've shared, not every business that I've started has worked. Most of them have failed, but then when it failed, I was like, oh, all right, it's done. So what's the next thing? So I think the thing that helped me is that I'm such a growth focused person, right? Like when I'm growing, feel like I'm living the best life ever, right?
Yeah.
So business, these attempts help me grow in such a way. When I have something to go after, right? I feel like I always have something to look forward to. So it's not hard for me to overcome. But I'll give you an example, in business when we started, when we were trying to raise funds for a deal and we were unable to raise $1,000. At that point we sat back and we reflect and we ask ourselves, what is this telling us? What do we need to do better? And what direction do we need to look at, right? And branding, going back to the community that we created the business for and educating was what we came up with, and we did that, and then things start moving. Even right now at XSITE Capital, we've had challenges, right? And we continue to have challenges. And sometimes it's become so ingrained that when we have failures and challenges, we start laughing and smiling like, oh, okay, the big one is about to come. Because we just know that when you fail, it's like guiding you. So failure now has become as just like a guiding post, right? There are only 2 ways. You either succeed or you learn lessons.
Yeah.
So it's just about reframing what failure is in your mind, and then you could do whatever you want, So failures are going to come. Or so-called failures, it's inevitable. It's an inevitable part of the journey. Use it as an opportunity to learn and get better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. So I just have 2 questions for you to round up. The first one is, you've been saying something called BRRR. What does that mean? Sorry, I thought it's build, renovate, something like that.
It's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. So you buy a property, you renovate it, you rent it out to a tenant. A few months later, you refinance, you pull out all the money that you put in the first place, then you go and do the next one.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you is, you've had some journey, to be honest, and it's an amazing one. If you had to say, like, I don't want to call, I usually call it the how to hit the ground running playbook for a new immigrant. Like, what would that be for you? Like, new person in the States today, wherever in the world you come as an immigrant, like, what would you say is 3, 4, 5 things that will be a playbook for hitting the ground running?
Number 1, Be careful of who picks you up at the airport.
I agree with that.
Your destiny, your life is gonna be framed significantly by who picks you up. So be mindful, right? If you're a big dreamer, because imagine you come into the US, a lot of opportunity, and somebody is picking you up at the airport. That person is coming from a higher frame. You're looking up to this person for guidance, and they're gonna tell you, "Oh, this is what you need to do. You need to get into IT. You need to do this, and you need to do into that." And that occupies a bigger space in your mind than anything else. So just be mindful of that, right? Understand that that person is not telling you a bad thing. They're only guiding you from their perspective of what they see. Don't limit yourself to that. Number two, step out of your community and go network with people in other communities, right? A lot of times, especially in my Cameroonian community, is like we band together. So if you see like a lot of us, we either there's usually trends. It's either nursing, like everybody's doing nursing. Next is like DBA, everybody's doing DBA. It's like IT and stuff like that. So venture out to other communities and see what other people are doing, and then learn from them. Like it's not scary outside of your community. Learn from them and go and try and implement. Number three, I'm going to say think big. Think as big as you can, right? You have just one life to live. Every day that goes by, you're losing part of that life. We are lucky to be in America. It's a society that if you apply yourself, you give value to people, you will grow. Don't limit yourself. Think big. And finally, I'll say read books. Not books about the career path that you want to go to. Read books by other business people. Read books on personal development. The greatest tool that you have is your mind, right? And who you become is highly dependent on the way you see the world, the lens with which you see the world.
Yeah.
So you got to clear that lens out. We come from our respective communities with a build out vision of how we see the world, right? I had somebody, as one of my personal development teachers, did an illustration where he had a bottle of Coke, right? No, a glass of Coke. And that glass, if you put Coca-Cola in a glass, you see how dark it is. You cannot see through. A lot of us, when we come, that's our perspective of the world, is surrounded by that glass, right? All we can see is those dark spaces around us. Is our culture, is like what we've been told America is about. It's been told like this is how you have to do, this is how you have to do it, right? But you have to clear that perspective. And the only way you clear it is by pouring clean water into it. So if you take that glass of Coke, you put it under a tap of water, and you just let water pour into it slowly, eventually the dark glass becomes clearer. So you in that space that has been surrounded by that glass, you could see now around you, you could see a much wider vision around you. And that's the vision of America, right? We are some of the hardest working, most disciplined people are immigrants that come to the US. If you look at any career, any path, anywhere, you see a Nigerian there that is successful, or you see an African immigrant there that is doing great things. We could do so much more. There are no limits, right? And then, finally, let's work together. Let's
Yes.
band together,
Yes.
right? Let's work together and do
Yes.
much more.
Yes.
I am so proud of what we've been able to do at XSITE Capital with a very small number of immigrants banding together 80% of our investors. And we've raised over $32 million from investors, African immigrants. We've bought together with our community of about 300 people so far. We've bought $168 million of apartment buildings. And our investors are making great returns. We've distributed 30% average annual returns to our investors. We did this with a very small number of people. Now imagine if we are hundreds, thousands, like other communities are doing, and working together and supporting each other. There's way more than enough for all of us.
Yeah, the sky is
There's more than enough to go around. Trust me, there is. We don't take anything from anybody by sharing. So there's a lot. So let's work together, because that's the way we build our society forwards.
This is a good place to end this. Like, I'm not going to add anything. I'm just going to say, let's end this here. Thank you so much, Leslie. Like, gosh, thank you. Like, it's been a beautiful 1 hour with you. God.
Thank you, Dozie. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Like, gosh, like, if there's one thing that I want you to take from this, is that point where he says, confidence helps you get over fear. As you keep acting, if you're scared of starting something, if you're looking to gain confidence, just act, just start, just move. And then everything else works out from there. As usual, please share with someone whom I find this useful. Please like, share. I mean, we have a Substack, subscribe. I would love you to subscribe. On YouTube, please subscribe too. And if you know someone we think we should talk to, please send them my way. Thank you so much. Ciao.